Hey there! Welcome back to Flowness Light, the place where we explore growth, healing, and the deeper truths beneath the surface of everyday life. Today, we're diving into a topic that might surprise you: positive thinking. Two simple words, but behind them lies a global movement that has shaped how millions of people approach life, challenges, and even pain. From best-selling books like The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale to The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, the idea has been repeated over and over again. If you think positive thoughts, you will attract positive outcomes. In a world that often feels uncertain, with rising stress, economic instability, and emotional burnout, this belief offers hope. It promises control in chaos, light in the dark. And to be fair, positive thinking does have real benefits. It can reduce anxiety in the short term. It gives people a sense of control over their emotions and situations. And when used wisely, it can boost productivity, motivation, and even physical health. In fact, for many people, positive thinking has become more than a mindset. It's a survival strategy, a way to keep going when life gets tough. A reminder to look for the good when everything else feels overwhelming. But here's where the problem begins. What happens when positivity becomes a rule? When we start forcing ourselves, or others, to always look on the bright side, even when things are falling apart. That's when positive thinking loses its power. And instead of helping us heal, it becomes a mask. We smile, but we don't feel okay. We tell ourselves to stay strong, while quietly falling apart inside. This isn't positivity anymore, it's pressure. And in many cases, it does more harm than good. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at something that's rarely talked about: the unforeseen consequences of positive thinking. We'll explore when it helps, when it hurts, and how to practice a healthier, more honest version of positivity. Because real growth doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from allowing ourselves to feel, to be human, and then slowly, truthfully, moving forward. Part 2. What is toxic positivity? So now that we understand why positive thinking is so appealing, let's talk about what happens when it crosses the line. There's a term that's been gaining attention in psychology and mental health spaces: toxic positivity. At first glance, it might sound contradictory. How could something positive ever be toxic? But here's what it really means. Toxic positivity is the pressure to always be positive, no matter what. It's the belief that no matter how difficult, painful, or messy life gets, you must smile, stay strong, and never show emotional struggle. It shows up in small, seemingly well-meaning phrases like, "Everything happens for a reason," "Just stay positive," "Others have it worse, be grateful." And while these words may come from good intentions, they often do the opposite of what they're meant to do. Instead of offering comfort, they dismiss the reality of someone's pain. Instead of allowing space to process emotion, they shut it down. The person on the receiving end may start to wonder, am I overreacting? Is it wrong to feel sad right now? Should I just keep this to myself? That's the hidden harm. Toxic positivity doesn't just ignore negative emotions. It makes people feel guilty for having them in the first place. And when we force ourselves to be okay all the time, we lose something vital: the chance to be honest with ourselves. The chance to be heard, understood, and truly supported. Because real emotional well-being isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that being human means feeling the full range of emotions, not just the pleasant ones. Part 3. The unseen consequences of toxic positivity. Now that we've defined toxic positivity, let's take a closer look at why it's harmful, even when it sounds helpful. Because when positivity becomes forced, it doesn't just silence pain in the moment. It creates deeper, long-term damage. Damage that often goes unnoticed, until it starts to hurt from the inside out. Here are 5 serious but often hidden consequences. 1. Emotional suppression. When you're told to just stay positive while going through something painful, you learn to hide your real emotions. You push away sadness, anger, frustration, not because they disappear, but because you feel like you're not allowed to feel them. Over time, this habit of emotional suppression builds up, like pressure in a sealed container. You may seem calm on the outside, but inside, stress is quietly accumulating. In fact, research by Gross and Levinson, 1997, found that people who regularly suppress negative emotions showed higher heart rates, elevated blood pressure, and a greater risk of emotional burnout. Because the truth is, healing doesn't start when we avoid feeling bad. It starts when we give ourselves permission to feel, even when it hurts. 2. Loss of authenticity. When you're constantly trying to appear cheerful, even when you're not, you begin to lose touch with your own truth. You smile when you're sad. You say, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart. And after a while, even your closest relationships start to feel distant. Because real connection doesn't come from surface-level positivity. It comes from emotional honesty. When we hide how we truly feel, people can sense it. They might not know what's wrong, but they'll feel the gap, the lack of real connection. And what's left often feels fake or hollow. 3. Guilt and shame. Here's something no one tells you about forced positivity. When you can't keep it up, you start to feel like it's your fault. You might ask yourself, why can't I just be grateful? Why do I still feel low when I have so much? Am I just weak? This inner dialogue leads to guilt and then shame. Instead of understanding your emotions as natural, you begin to see them as personal failures. That's the danger. You stop trusting yourself and start believing that your sadness is something to be ashamed of. 4. Invalidation of others. Toxic positivity doesn't just affect how we treat ourselves. It affects how we respond to others. When someone shares their struggles and we reply with, "Just look on the bright side. Stay positive. It'll pass." It may sound encouraging, but what we're really saying is, "I don't want to hear your pain." Even unintentionally, these responses dismiss people's real experiences. They make others feel unheard, misunderstood, even invisible. And when someone feels emotionally invalidated, they're far less likely to open up again. That's how loneliness grows, in silence. 5. Unrealistic expectations. There's a belief popularized by self-help culture that what you think, you attract. If you think negative thoughts, you'll invite negative outcomes. So people start fearing their own emotions. This belief, known as the law of attraction, can be empowering, but when misunderstood, it becomes dangerous because it leads people to believe that their struggles, illness, poverty, depression are the result of their own negative mindset. This creates a cruel illusion that if you're suffering, it's somehow your fault. It removes empathy. It ignores complex realities, and it shifts responsibility away from society or circumstance and places all the blame on the individual. In the end, toxic positivity doesn't make life better. It just covers pain with a smile. But healing, growth, and resilience require more than surface-level optimism. They require truth. They require space. And above all, they require the freedom to feel. Part 4. Supporting research. So far, we've explored the emotional and psychological consequences of toxic positivity. From emotional suppression, to guilt, to disconnection. But these aren't just opinions or personal experiences. They're backed by real science. Let's take a look at what research has to say. 1. Stanford University, the cost of emotional suppression. Researchers at Stanford University have studied the effects of emotional suppression. Specifically, what happens to the body and brain when people try to hide or ignore their negative feelings. Their findings are clear. Suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It actually increases physiological stress, raising heart rate, elevating blood pressure, and placing the body in a state of chronic tension. Over time, This constant state of internal pressure affects brain function, weakens emotional regulation, and increases the risk of long-term mental health issues, like anxiety and depression. In other words, pretending to be okay isn't harmless. It takes a toll, slowly, quietly, and deeply. 2. University of Texas at Austin, the healing power of expressing emotions. Meanwhile, at the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. James Pennebaker, a leading psychologist, has spent decades researching the benefits of emotional expression, especially through practices like journaling. His work shows that when people are encouraged to write about their true thoughts and feelings, they experience measurable improvements in both mental and physical health, lower stress, better immune function, improved emotional clarity. And on the flip side, those who consistently hide their feelings or put on a happy face while feeling miserable inside tend to experience higher emotional distress and lower life satisfaction over time. This reinforces a key point. Honest emotional expression heals. Forced positivity harms. 3. Harvard Business Review 2020. The danger of blind optimism. Even in professional and leadership environments, the costs of unrealistic positivity are becoming more apparent. A 2020 study published in Harvard Business Review explored how blind optimism, the tendency to ignore risks in favor of hopeful thinking, can actually weaken decision-making and reduce preparedness in times of crisis. Teams that were overly focused on staying positive often failed to address real problems, ignored warning signs, and were caught off guard by challenges they could have anticipated. In essence, when positivity is used to avoid reality rather than respond to it, it doesn't create strength, it creates fragility. Across all these studies, the message is consistent. True well-being doesn't come from constant positivity. It comes from emotional honesty, from balance, from grounded awareness. Because when we deny our pain, we also deny our capacity to heal. Part V. Why we fall into the trap. Now that we've seen how toxic positivity can harm our well-being, a natural question arises. Why do we fall into this trap so easily? Why do we keep telling ourselves and others to just stay positive even when it doesn't feel right? The truth is, this isn't just a personal habit. It's deeply influenced by culture, society, and even the way we're raised. Let's break it down. 1. Social media culture. The pressure to appear happy. In today's digital world, we're constantly surrounded by images of smiling faces, success stories, and motivational quotes. Scroll through any social media feed, and you'll see people posting highlights, not real life. Celebrations, achievements, vacation photos. Rarely the tears, the failures, or the quiet moments of struggle. This creates an illusion that everyone else is happy all the time. And if we're not, we must be doing something wrong. So, we start performing happiness. We smile for the camera. We hide our stress. And slowly, the line between genuine positivity and emotional pressure begins to blur. Social media rewards positivity, likes, comments, praise, but it often punishes vulnerability. That makes it harder to be honest, even with ourselves. 2. Cultural beliefs. Strength means silence. In many cultures, especially in parts of Asia, there's a deep-rooted belief that talking about your struggles is a sign of weakness. We hear messages like, "Don't complain," "Be strong," "Keep it to yourself." These values can teach resilience, but they can also discourage emotional expression. Over time, we learn to internalize pain, to stay silent and stay strong, even when what we really need is support. This cultural script makes it difficult to say things like, "I'm not okay," "I need help," "I'm feeling overwhelmed." And so, we default to positivity, not because it helps, but because it feels safer than telling the truth. 3. Lack of emotional education. We were never taught how to feel. Here's another reason many of us fall into the trap. We were never taught how to deal with difficult emotions. In school, we learn math, science, history, but very few of us were ever taught how to process sadness, fear, anger, or grief. So when these emotions show up, we don't know what to do with them. They feel uncomfortable, messy, even wrong. And since positivity feels more socially acceptable, we use it as a shortcut. We cover pain with affirmations. We avoid difficult conversations by saying everything's fine. Not because we're okay, but because we don't know how to sit with what we feel. In the absence of emotional literacy, toxic positivity becomes a coping mechanism. So no, we don't fall into this trap because we're shallow or naive. We fall into it because we're conditioned to believe that positivity is the only acceptable emotion, because we fear judgment, rejection, and discomfort, because we were never taught a better way. But awareness is the first step to change. And once we see the trap, we can begin to step out of it. Not by abandoning positivity, but by embracing emotional honesty alongside it. Part 6. The healthy alternative. We understand why so many of us fall into its trap. The question becomes, what's the alternative? If just think positive isn't always the right answer, then what kind of mindset truly supports emotional well-being? The goal isn't to reject positivity entirely. It's to practice it more honestly, more compassionately, and more wisely. Here are 3 simple but powerful shifts we can make. 1. Emotional honesty. Let yourself feel. The first and most important step is this: allow yourself to feel what you feel. Sadness, frustration, exhaustion. These are not signs of weakness. They're signs that you're human, and they deserve space. Instead of rushing to fix the emotion, try saying to yourself, "It's okay that I feel this way. I don't need to hide it or explain it. I'm allowed to not be okay today." This is called emotional honesty. The ability to recognize and name your emotions without judgment. Because real strength isn't pretending to feel good. It's having the courage to be real with yourself. 2. Validation before motivation. Start with empathy. When someone we care about is struggling, our instinct is often to help them get back up quickly. We say things like, "Stay strong. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Just think positive." But before offering motivation, what people really need first is validation. They need to hear, "That sounds really hard. Your feelings make sense. It's okay to feel overwhelmed." This doesn't mean we leave them in their pain. It means we meet them there first. Because when someone feels truly heard and understood, they're far more likely to move forward and to trust your encouragement when it comes. 3. Balanced positivity, realistic optimism. Positivity isn't the problem. Denial is. The healthy alternative is not blind optimism, but something called realistic optimism, a mindset that holds hope while still honoring the present reality. It sounds like, "I believe things will get better, but I also accept that today is difficult. There is light ahead, but I don't have to pretend it's not dark right now." This kind of thinking allows space for both pain and possibility. It doesn't force a smile, but it also doesn't give up hope. Balanced positivity isn't about erasing negative emotions. It's about holding them alongside hope so we can move forward. With clarity, not pressure. In the end, the healthiest mindset is one that allows the full range of human experience. Not just joy, but sadness. Not just confidence, but doubt. Not just sunshine, but storm. Because emotional health isn't about always feeling good. It's about feeling honestly and learning to move through each emotion with self-awareness and care. That's what true strength looks like. Part 7. The power of real positivity. Let's be clear, positive thinking isn't the enemy. It can be incredibly helpful, a source of hope, motivation, and strength, especially during life's most difficult moments. But when positivity becomes forced, when it's used to avoid pain instead of process it, or when it silences real emotions in the name of staying strong, it begins to do the opposite of what it was meant to do. It becomes pressure. It becomes shame. it becomes a mask that hides our most human needs. Real strength is not about always smiling. It's about having the courage to feel, to sit with discomfort, to admit when you're struggling, and still show up with self-compassion. Because healing doesn't begin when we shut our feelings down. It begins when we make space for all of them, not just the happy ones. True healing begins when we allow space for every emotion, not just the happy ones. So if you take away just one message from this video, let it be this: you don't have to be positive all the time to live a meaningful, empowered life. You just have to be real. And that, in itself, is powerful. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, feel free to like, share, or subscribe for more content that speaks to both the heart and the mind. This is Flow Nest Light, where truth and growth always go hand in hand.